titled this stream, Will Brandon Aiyuk Stay with the 49ers? And we didn't super prep this, but I was listening to the press conferences. They happened like a half an hour before our stream. And I forget which reporter it was, but someone asked Brandon Aiyuk about his season, how he's felt. They asked him about how he felt about not making the Pro Bowl. He talked about being very disappointed. They asked him about his personal goals for this season, as well as the team goals, and if he felt like he reached them. He was, I felt like, pretty honest in the way that he said he was proud of himself for what he did this season, but that he didn't reach all of his goals. And in obviously trying to, I don't know if this is the right word, but read in between the tea leaves, it sounded like potentially he was happy with his yards, but not with his amount of touches and touchdowns. And potentially, like, I think it was a big goal for him to get on that Pro Bowl list. He talked about it being a really big disappointment. And even like when asked to elaborate on that, and because someone was kind of like, oh, well, that's disappointing, but you've made these other lists. He was kind of like, yeah, but like, as a player, it is important to us that like our work is recognized, and that is, I know that guys put that in their contracts that can trigger certain bonuses for them. So he did seem pretty open about being disappointed about the Pro Bowl list, and then someone kind of I guess used that as a catapult to ask Brandon Aiyuk about if the Niners have expressed how impactful he's been for them this year, and how much they value him, and if they'd like to keep him, and if they've made any sort of offers talking about his contract, his 5th-year option, the upcoming next year, and his willingness or desire to stay with the 49ers. And Brandon Aiyuk said that his agent had been calling him, but that he hadn't picked up the phone. And the way he said it was like kind of quick and sly. But and maybe I'm causing drama, like maybe I'm just like, it's so possible that I am. But I read it as like maybe like, is it possible that Brandon Aiyuk is unhappy with the amount of touches that he get, or the amount of touches he gets in this offense? And like, if he was on the Chiefs, I think he'd be like the number one target. Easy. Is it possible he doesn't want to stay with the 49ers? Was that him communicating with the 49ers like, I might be open to staying, but like some things need to change and I'm kind of waiting? Or was that just like a throwaway comment that maybe I'm reading into? Did you even hear him talk about this? And do you think this is am I going conspiracy theory, Alex Jones on us, or was this fair? The way he said it, I felt like I was shocked. I looked on Twitter like right when it was happening, and no one kind of mentioned it, and I was like, I felt like that was like a little bit of I don't know, haggling negotiation. I felt like it was a little comment from Aiyuk that, for me, I felt like it was really noticeable.
I've seen the quote, obviously,
Yeah.
like you said, it was right before we went live that, those tweets started showing up on my feed. But I didn't hear the soundbite, so I don't know if I can really speak to
The
what it
tone of it
seemed.
all.
Yeah, I don't know what it really seemed like, but I mean, you bring up a good, a good perspective. Uh, it could be that he's not happy with the amount of opportunities, amount of targets he's getting. I think it's pretty obvious that if he was getting, wide receiver one targets that we see other, teams give their wide receiver ones, he would probably be the unquestioned, like, top 3 receiver in the league. And right now, that's really been the only thing holding him back from him being in those discussions nationally. Like, I think a lot
Yeah.
of people acknowledge that he's like a really talented player. And, I've seen a lot of people share, oh, like, this is who I would vote as my AP all pro. And I see Brandon Aiyuk, get voted to, some people here and there.
Fans seem to like recognize, like, I know when they just put out the
Yeah.
fan voting, he was in the like top
Hmm.
votes for that, and obviously 49er fans show out immensely. So I think it might be something like the team recognizes, but potentially Ayuk also wants that, league credit.
Which I think is like, that's understandable, right? Because I also think, like, if he gets the league credit, that I think would help him in negotiations as well, right? I think he's seen enough, like with Deebo's negotiations, how that's gone, how the 49ers, somewhat try to play it.
Yeah.
They do play
Yeah, he's
hardball a
like, I'm
little
ready for
bit.
this. I know.
That's part of the reason I think Nick Bosa's contract took so long. Although Nick Bosa had the national recognition, and all the
Yeah,
stats
Nick Bosa's
lined up to
contract
make
takes
that
a long
case.
time.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't want to say that he wouldn't want to play with the 49ers. You know, I don't want to read into it that much, but ultimately every player wants to get paid. As long as the 49ers, can put their money where their mouth is, I think he would be happy.
Okay, I have a question. These are all thought experiments because we're not Brandon Aiyuk, we're not in his head. Um, do you think if the offers were similar, like if the Chiefs offered Brandon Aiyuk a similar contract to whatever the Niners were able to offer him, maybe like do you think the 49ers would have to offer more? Like, would Brandon Aiyuk want to take a hometown discount to stay with the 49ers? Or do you think because
No,
he isn't getting as many targets, the 49ers would have to pay more to keep him? Or do you think it's something if it's even, he'd want to stay?
maybe
Because I
both.
think with the 49ers, you get the possibility, like, we can talk more about the window, but you get that possibility of always competing for a championship. I mean, if you're in the Chiefs, you also get that. But I'm wondering do you think Brandon Aiyuk has a preference towards the 49ers, or do you think it's just where the money is for him, or do you think maybe does have the desire to be able to get more personal accolades that might be easier to get in a different system?
It could be all of the above. Like, sure, every player would want to play for a team like the 49ers, but at the same time, players want to get paid, and
Yeah.
they'll explore other options if it means that they'll get paid more elsewhere. And like you say, it usually that also means that they're going to get more opportunities. They're going to get more targets. They're going to be the number one guy somewhere. So yeah, for some players, that's really all they want. And I wouldn't fault him for wanting that. So it'll be interesting to see. As far, I think the 49ers, if they did want to keep Brandon Aiyuk, they would be smart to not let him even sniff free agency. I know Technic Sheik in the comments pointed out that, he's had his fifth year option picked up. So
Yeah.
the 49ers do have next year, next summer, I should say,
That,
to do the negotiation, but then he's a
yeah.
free agent. Then anyone can start making offers. I would rather them do it this off season because you don't let him even talk to other teams.
I have a question. You know how he said, going back to kind of what sparked this conversation in my head, him saying, I haven't picked up the phone yet. Is this, and this might be like basic knowledge that I'm just dumb about, but if the 49ers were trying to give him an extension now, could he not pick up, could he like refuse that offer and try
Yeah,
to force himself to free agency? And could he
yeah.
be, or is it one of those things, if you're under contract, do you have to like if, since he's under contract right now, if the 49ers gave him an offer, does he have to take it? Or is he allowed to say, no,
Uh,
I want to wait?
no, I mean negotiations. I think everything is pretty open. He does not have to take anything. He doesn't want to. In fact, like a lot of players do, kind of defer and bet on themselves, right? Like they
Yeah.
wait.
We
Uh,
heard that about like Lamar and stuff, right?
Yeah, and sometimes it could pay off, sometimes it can hurt the player because sometimes they bet on themselves that final year, and if they end up getting hurt, that tanks their value, not just for the current team they're on, but potentially any other teams that would have been interested in him, right? So that's always a risk, but some players are willing to take that risk. So not sure where Brandon Ayuk is at. Here's like, so when I saw the quote, Ashley, about
Mhm.
like him saying like he hadn't picked up the phone. Again, I didn't hear him say it, so
Yeah.
I took it as he's not focused on that right now. Like
Okay, I like
but
that.
I didn't hear him say it, so I don't know.
You could be right. You could be
But
right.
that's
I like
kind
to.
of how I took him.
I'm an instigator. I'll admit. I like to. My
Get
goal
us
is
to the
usually
pot.
to be over dramatic about the game that just happened, but I couldn't do that, so I had to be over dramatic about the press
You have to
conference.
switch it up a little bit. Yeah.
um, really quickly, uh, when reading Technic's comment, you got to get it done before the summer. It seems possible that the 49ers are attempting to do that, and that Brandon Aiyuk might not be interested. What I was getting at is kind of, and not, I'm not speaking for Brandon Aiyuk, but I'm displaying that it's possible he's not answering the phone because he is unhappy and he's trying to send a message or trying to negotiate. But Steph is also making the probably rational conclusion that they're going into the playoffs, and he might just be like, "Hey, I'm focused on the job at hand right now, and I'm going to get that done, as soon as the season is over after I've won a Super Bowl and just showed myself off even more for these last 3 games," which is definitely possible. Do you now the 49ers kind of have a habit, I feel like, with their stars of waiting until the last possible option. Do you think from their perspective that they would be trying to get it done right now, or do you assume that they won't try until next season
No, I think they'll try to get
or
it
next fall?
done this summer because they do try to get it done before the player becomes a free agent,
Yeah.
basically.
Okay.
I think the only time where, well, yeah, Deebo, I'm trying to remember. Deebo wasn't a free
No,
agent.
because they were trying to trade for him, remember?
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, that's what it was. Yeah, I was like, wait, like how are there other teams like yes, you're right. Yeah, so they
Yeah.
try to do it before the player hits the open market, which is smart. Um that's how you have to do it, I think.
Do you think Rick Sauce, Rock Sauce, just kidding. For some reason, this is such an old song, but my dad used to play it. You know that song like Rock Lobster? Ah,
No,
Rock Lobster. That was a really
can't
bad.
say that
My
I
dad is
do.
in the gym, so he's not listening to this stream, so he can't comment on it. But it was a funny. It's like such a weird song. It's like, and then there's a lobster. It's like a rock. It's like an old '80s song. Never mind. I'm gonna stop talking about it.
I'll
But
have
if
to
there's
Google
any
that.
old people in the gym, older, sorry, not to be offensive, then maybe you've heard it. It was a good song. He used to play it all the time when I was a kid. And even though I think it's like very much like a grown up song, when you're a kid, it's kind of like the like baby shark da 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 da
Yeah,
baby shark. It's like that, but from the 80s.
for adults.
Now that we've lost everyone because I just did whatever that was. Um, uh, Rock Sauce says that Deebo had more catches, more yards, more touchdowns, rushing yards. Deebo is better basically in his contract year than Aiyuk was. Aiyuk shouldn't make as much as Deebo. I have a couple, I guess, disagreements with that. One, you're not solely going based off of statistical production because I think everyone, including the team, is very aware of Brandon Aiyuk's ability versus opportunity. Second of all, my mind blanked for a second because I was reading that he actually really likes the song Rock Lobster, so I started thinking about the song again. Also, as time goes on, contracts get more expensive. So just in
Yeah,
general, he's going to
just
be
to the
making
market.
more because it's just like with credit cards, what happens? Do you know what I'm talking about?
The
How
interest rate
interest?
goes up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
it just goes up. Like the prices of wide receivers are just going up across the league. So I don't think comparing his contract to what Deebo received in previous years, you're going to want to compare him to wide receivers getting contracts the same year he is and their production. Is my thought
I
on that
have the
comment.
exact I have the exact same thought. And I think when Debo put up, his 2019 season, for example, that was the year he blew up, right? It was 2019, or was it 2020? No.
What are you
Okay.
saying?
Whatever year that was, that that he like went off and had, I
2021.
think it was 2021. Okay. So that year he wasn't really competing with anyone, for touches as much. Sure, okay,
No.
George Kittle. There wasn't Christian McCaffrey in the picture. BA wasn't really like the receiver he is now. And Jimmy Garoppolo at the time was your quarterback. So I think there's several factors why it worked for Deebo and why he was able to get the numbers that he was at that time. And now, like you see, Brandon Aiyuk's having to compete, with his own teammates for touches and all this stuff. But for the reasons you mentioned, the market thing, the fact that, what Ronnie said, BA is a true wide receiver one. I really do feel that way. I think he's talented enough to, be seen as that like throughout the league, right? So I think he is going to get paid more than the Deebo, and I think he does deserve it.
I do too, and I do think like the and who knows if they'll structure it like this, but I do think that they'll be able to have Deebo and Ayuk for a couple of years because like when usually their price, even though contract wise it goes up, it goes down that first year when they usually extend people, and then it gets bigger. And Deebo, which in hindsight I wonder if he regrets, but he fought for like or the rumors were that it was his side that wanted that shorter extension, so he only has I think 2 more years on his extension because it was 3 years, but it didn't count the year that they gave it to him. So I think that they'll be able to keep both of them for potentially forever, but at least for next year and the year after that.
I don't know about forever.
Not forever, but like for the entirety of their next contract. Because some people were saying like in order to sign Brandon Aiyuk, you'd have to get rid of Deebo, and I don't think that the way I don't know if it's still Parag who does that, but I don't think that the way they handle contracts is
Hold on,
still that exact.
my headphones disconnected for a second. Hold on.
No
I'm having
worries.
technical
We're
issues with my
we're gonna
AirPods
let
today.
we're gonna let Steph deal with that. But and then Roxas says they should try to pay him like a or should they try to pay him like a wide receiver one, even though Christian McCaffrey, Deebo, and Kittle are used? I think that's a really good question. It's definitely something to me that's fair to debate because he's worth that amount of money because that is his skill set, and you know that that's what he's going to fight for and what he'll receive from other teams. So in order to retain him, the 49ers would definitely have to give him that sort of contract. But I understand the hesitation because even if he has that ability, is if he's not seeing that, if he's never going to be able to see that amount of production on the 49ers team specifically, is it worth paying him? I still argue yes, because I do think eventually they could either trade away Deebo or Kittle. I just think Brandon Aiyuk is the most consistent like stalwart on the team and that he's worth retaining. But I see how he could be more valuable to another team, and maybe the 49ers, at least the way that they see it themselves, is like, is it worth it for us to pay him as much as a team that is going to utilize him more would be willing to pay him, because we have all these other guys that could potentially make up for some of his production. But I think BA would argue, even though all those guys are super talented, they don't actually make up for what I do. I'm consistently healthy. I'm consistently running incredible
Yeah.
routes down the field. Like my skill set still stands out compared to these guys, even though everyone has their unique talents on the team. What do you think? Do you think it's worth it to pay Deebo as much as he, would get for playing on the Chiefs on a team like the 49ers where he's not going to get as much production?
Yeah, for the reasons you mentioned, and also like you're paying him for the right to keep him too. And
Yeah.
a player sets their value in these negotiations, and if you want to keep him, then you either want to meet that price, or as we know, the 49ers is going to try to finagle their way into paying a little lower than that. But yeah, I think, yeah, you do pay him as a wide receiver one because that's the role that he's been doing for this team, even though he's not always the number one target. He is a wide receiver one on this team. He just happens to be on an offense that, spreads the wealth around a little bit.
I think that the nice thing about Ayuk too, like, is like he's still, even though he's so good, he still seems like he's this is, you can't see my hand, extending, ascending. That's the word. Going up. He's still ascending. Where I do wonder with Deebo Samuel, like, have we seen him at his have we seen the best of Deebo Samuel already? Christian McCaffrey at the top of his game, but you look at who's the guy that the Vikings cut and then the Jets just cut. Running, like, a lot of running backs fall off a cliff around 27, 28. Christian McCaffrey, I'm not, knock on so much wood, not trying to say he's gonna fall off a cliff. George Kittle, all three of those players, incredibly talented players, but it does feel like they might have already reached their peak. And what the 49ers could be hopeful for is like continuation of where they're at now, or like a steady decline. With Ayuk, you assume that if you give him that second contract, he's gonna continue. Like, we haven't seen the best of Ayuk yet. There could be a time within this 49ers team where Ayuk does get more opportunity than all these other guys, where he is the one that the team is leaning on. And with what we've seen of him so far, I think he'd be more than capable. And I think he's proved that this year. I think some fans kind of predicted that last year, but I know, at least for myself, I've had times of hesitation with, like, could Ayuk really, there's been certain times where I think sometimes big drops like stick in your mind. And so I know for me, I've been like, well, can Ayuk really take that wide receiver one role if there were no Deebo, if there were no, and I think this year he's proved, yes, I could. And I think he's shown not only could he do that now, but I have full faith that he's going to continue progressing. And it would, as a 49er fan, it would hurt for me to see him kind of reach that. I can't pronounce that word for some reason. I don't know why it's so hard for me, but to reach his peak at ascend at a different team. So I do think that the 49ers should keep him around. Really quick, I want to shout out Mariah. Is she feeling healthy? She said, yo,
Mariah,
yo, yo.
yes. Mariah's doing better. We resumed our Two Goats show, our Thursday shows last week, and I'll be on